Hey guys, this is Alex, and welcome to the Two Dudes, Brews, Interviews podcast. On today's episode, we're talking about the classic 1966 Western directed by Sergio Leone, The Good, The Bad, and The Ugly. If you like what you hear, consider subscribing to the podcast. Leave us a review, and maybe even tell your friends about us. With that being said, we hope you enjoy the show.
We're back for the first time in like a month.
It feels a lot longer than a month.
It always does feel longer than what it's been, and a month feels like a year compared to a week feeling like a month.
Very true. Even though that confused me slightly.
The math doesn't really work out on that now. But we are doing a classic, The Good, The Bad, and The Ugly, per my recommendation. I think it's something that we both wanted to tackle for a while. I think both of us have needed a good excuse to watch it anyway, so...
Was this still on HBO Max for you, or did you end up buying it?
I bought it on Vudu, yeah. I ended up buying it.
I remember it was on HBO around the time that you recommended it, and earlier this week when I went to go watch it, it wasn't there anymore, so I was like, fuck, I don't want to spend $15, $20 on it, at least not right now. And I found it on Tubi for free.
Tubi?
Yeah, Tubi.
I know what that is.
It had ads, but it wasn't too bad.
Okay.
There was like one ad per hour, which is...
3.
Yeah, 3 ads. It was fine.
Okay. That sounds... it's a slow burn movie, so I feel like it probably isn't too obtrusive.
Gave me enough time to get up and go use the bathroom, come back. Ad was over. Perfect.
Cool.
You know?
Don't want to skip too far ahead. We're drinking like the show favorite beer between us two, so...
Yeah.
We're drinking Finn Du Monde.
Nectar of the Gods.
Nectar of the Gods. I can't tell you how many times we've drank it, but it feels like a staple at this point, like a special treat. I don't remember the last time we drank it. We say it every time.
It's almost been a year, I think.
There's no way.
Almost. Because we did Titan in like April.
Like March or April, yeah, something like that.
A little too long to go without it, if I had to say anything about that.
It's a blonde, or like a tripel.
In honor of our boy Blondie.
Our man with no name. Even though it's just Clint Eastwood with a cigar in his mouth, like the whole time. But yeah, it's a favorite, and we'll keep drinking it, and it'll be a problem, I'm sure, at some point. But
oh yeah, yes it will. This is the first time that we've had it in a can.
Yeah, I know.
It tastes slightly different to me than what I remember.
I agree. It's a little bit more metallic.
I feel like it kind of tastes like banana beer. Are you getting that at all?
It's sweet in the middle.
It's not nearly as spicy as I remember. Remember how it used to have that bite? It's not there really, but I think it's just as good, but it's slightly different.
I think I agree with you. I mean, hell, they could be changing the recipe on us eventually, but
they better fucking not.
Remember the first time we tried it, I think there was a lot of like nutmeg and a little bit more of like a cinnamon to it, but yeah, it is a little bit more like how do I put it?
It's a little more balanced, like a kind of a middle flavor.
Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty good. It's always good. We're gonna have fun. Yeah, man. Not a whole lot's been going on with either of us. You've been watching movies. I've been reading books. That's it, man.
It's January.
Yeah. Not a whole lot of new shit's coming out. You know, the Christmas block, like Christmas slots for movies is like waning out. Like Avatar obviously is still in theaters, but not a whole lot of new shit coming out. Like no new artists are really releasing, like, big name artists are not like really releasing any good music right now. Nobody's pulling like week one Dawn FM by the weekend or anything like that. So
yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, everybody did because it was released way too early.
There's going to be a lot of album announcements probably like in March, April, that time span. New National coming out.
JPEG.
Hopefully new Frank Ocean. Coachella is around then.
Yep.
And he's headlining one of the nights. Unless he cancels.
Unless he just sings shit from Blonde, and everybody will still be happy, I'm sure.
I would still die. Totally.
Yeah. Let's open her up. First Western.
All right. This is kind of a big thing to tackle.
This is like infamous, considered by some directors, such as Quentin Tarantino, as the best film ever made.
Yeah.
It's definitely great. I'll say that much.
Hearing shit like that really set my expectations high. And you know how sometimes you go into a classic and it just doesn't hit the way that you want it to? This was definitely not the case with this one.
Okay.
I went in with high expectations and it exceeded them, and then some. I think I can say with confidence that this is like one of the greatest fucking things I've ever seen. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay, cool. I don't know if I share that same sentiment with you, to be honest with you.
Really?
It's not like I didn't enjoy my watch. I really did. I thought there were some things that really threw a curveball for what my expectations were as far as like plot and character. I was really expecting it to be a little bit more cookie cutter.
Same.
Stereotypical, playing to like Western tropes. I think in the long run, I see what it was doing. I think it would be something that I would enjoy more with concurrent viewings. Just it's a 3-hour film. It's a lot to sit down through. And granted, it's, in my opinion, not very action-packed.
I'd agree with that.
I would say like at least 80% of the time, it's just a lot of slow burn, ADR dialogue. There are things that kind of like keep the tempo constant and slow, which, don't get me wrong, I'm like definitely here for. But there were like some problems I have, but like there are some amazing highlights as well. I just don't think I held it to the esteem that I thought I would when I came out on the other end. But I still really appreciated a lot of things going on.
Okay, that makes sense. When I say all that, I don't mean it's like a perfect movie with something that's like 60 years old almost. When did this come out? 64?
I think 66 or 68. I will find out for you. Hold on one sec.
One thing that kind of shocked me actually was the knowledge that something like Psycho came out 4 to 6 years before this, but this feels older.
Came out in 66.
66, okay.
Yes, it does feel very aged. I mean, this was, let's see, 7 years before my father was born. Oh, wow. So it is 40,
Math.
50...
57?
7. Is my dad 50? No. There's no way he's fucking 50. He'll be 50 in May. But, yeah, he'll be 50 in May. God, that old fucker. But anyway, it's old as fuck. I think a lot of it holds up really well.
I think so too.
Especially visually. I think visually it holds up in a way that I never really expected from this era. I think Psycho visually...
It's on a small scale.
Yeah. I think the tightness being interior, all the whole movie is essentially interior, small set, rooms. I think that really ages a film.
Yeah.
When you go back that far. This movie, it being essentially expansive, open set, out in the desert.
This is a fucking spectacle.
Yeah. It's like comparing, it's like old Villeneuve in a way. Like the color palettes, obviously there's no aliens or fucking Dune, Fremen, worms, and, But to me, it just feels expansive and open, and cinematography this old still feels really fresh. Yeah, man.
I think there's a reason for that, though, why it still feels fresh. I feel like this established so many tropes, like shot-wise, shot composition, a lot of snap zooms, and like amazing...
the editing, bro.
Oh, the editing is great in this. I don't know. I feel like just because so many people have copied it over the years, just kind of makes it feel not old anymore,
Yeah. We should preface, this is technically the third installment of a trilogy.
Kind of.
Well, I think all 3 characters are in all 3, I think.
Eastwood's in all 3. Lee Van Cleef, the bad, is in 2 of them. And then I think this is the only one with Tuco.
Okay.
Eli Walloch, I believe. Mm-hmm. He was supposed to be in one of the others, but the studio interfered and said he's not a big enough star, I guess, and they didn't bring him back. And that led to his friendship with old Sergio. I think they kind of broke it off after that, I guess.
Okay. See, I figured you would do a lot more deep diving in that aspect of like history between casting and director and all that shit. I'm so bad about that. I do not do that.
I tend to be obsessive about pretty random things, to be honest.
Do you like collect toenails and shit like that? Like keep it underneath the sink and shit?
No comment.
Have you ever, this is a weird sidetrack, but Elizabeth she'll tell me like all these weird things she hears on the radio about like second date updates and all that shit about weird fucking people. Even though I think at a certain point they're like scripted in some ways. But I don't know. Who cares? But people keeping like toenails and just weird shit. That frightens me that there's human beings out there like that.
I mean, one of my buddies used to have dreadlocks, and when he cut them, he kept them in a bag in his closet.
That's so weird. Yeah. That's so fucking weird.
That's not my thing.
I wish he would have never told me that. I don't want to know who it is or anything like that. Anyway, I think something that really blew me away was about the first 15 to 20 minutes of this film. Getting our intro to the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think Tuco's was kind of hard to get into the zone at first. The establishing shots were a little confusing. I didn't really understand what was going on.
This is the guys walking into the saloon, right? Mm-hmm. I guess with the other two characters, the good and the bad, they kind of had more of an established scene before we get that title card saying who it is. Tuco just jumps out the fucking window. Yeah. And it's like, here he is.
And that's something I want to comment on. Like, why does he jump out the window? He kills all three men and then jumps out the window.
I don't know.
Like, it's so bizarre to me. Could be like a turkey leg.
Could be afraid that there's more outside or on the way or something. I don't know.
You know, I think that was a little uncomfortable getting into. And granted, you know, you get like a few minutes of film score, intro credits, stuff like that, which is pretty typical of a film this old.
This title sequence is like amazing though. Yeah. The animated shit, especially with Ennio Morricone's score behind it, which I'm sure we'll bring up a few times throughout the episode.
Briefly on that, like I just couldn't believe how much the score gets reused in modern day. Obviously the whistle, I don't know how to describe it, but yeah, that
it's used in everything. Yep. It's been parodied a billion times.
The like that's used on fucking commercials today. Interesting stuff like highlight clips for like NFL or like NBA, like just weird stuff on like ESPN uses like these weird callbacks to this for some reason. Just bizarre to me.
Dude, it's so iconic though.
It is. I guess I never really thought about where it came from, which was a pleasant surprise, you know, going back in history.
You would think it's kind of played out because of how often it is used in modern culture, but going back to the source material and seeing it play out how it was supposed to be, it like brought new life to it to me for some reason.
I completely agree. Seeing where they lie in the film was like, oh, I mean, I guess I never really would associate this with this emotion or scene. It was very bizarre. God, dude, the best intro though is the bad. I was fucking blown away with the shot. Him standing in the doorway for like 2 to 3 minutes doing nothing, essentially, like just making his presence known. Like that was fucking amazing. For some reason, I've never seen such a sinister mustache in my life.
There's something about Lee Van Cleef's face that has like this natural evil aura behind it. I can't imagine like going through life looking like this. Not saying he's like a super ugly dude or anything.
No, he's a handsome man.
Like he looks like if he was like hitchhiking, you wouldn't pick him up. You know?
No. He looks very untrustworthy, which I think is like oddly contrasted with Tuco, him being the most untrustworthy, like scumbag rat out of all three. Like it seems he actually like his face is extremely lovable. Like he's kind of like your deadbeat uncle or something. You know what I mean? You kind of love him even though despite his flaws, which I think he's a character that I grew to love the most throughout the film.
Same. It's kind of weird because I came into this obviously knowing that this is like Clint Eastwood's his like stardom jumping off point. And I already kind of knew who Lee Van Cleef was because he's done some stuff with John Carpenter 10, 20 years later maybe. But the one guy I did not know was Eli Wallach. And it turns out like this is basically his movie.
Yeah, I looked at his filmography and there was just not a whole lot afterwards where I felt like it was extremely noteworthy. I definitely think out of all three, he has the most, how do I put this? His character has the most range, I feel like. I feel like his character gets to touch on a lot.
I agree.
Where, you know, he's a piece of shit, but also you sympathize with him when he meets his brother in the church. You know, you kind of feel for him because he almost feels tortured, quite literally, at some point in the film, in the prison of war camp. And then also, like, he has his own moments to shine, especially, like, in the back half of the film, which, I don't know, I guess that's something I wanted to bring up, too. Like, I don't know how you thought the film was going to play out. You know, you think you have your three characters, and my point of view was, oh, it's going to be like this constant chase or constant action. These characters would meet and break away, but it would be, they wouldn't team up in any way. It felt like the three plot lines would meet eventually in some way. Like, that's how I viewed it in my mind, but for some reason, like, everyone works together at a certain point, and then everybody works against each other at a certain point, and then it's also, like, solo. It was a a lot going on, especially like the length of the film drawn out. Like you get like these ebbs and flows within these characters interacting, the dynamic changing between the power struggle, who's on the bottom, who's on the top. It was really interesting to me.
I think the character relations were more dynamic than you see in about 95% of movies, probably. And it's harder to comment on Angel Eyes, Van Cleef's character, because he kind of disappears entirely for the second act, I'd say.
Yeah.
He's not really in focus until that last hour, maybe.
Yeah, the prisoner of war camp, I think, like kind of reestablishes him. And then he kind of like breaks away again once but it's like an hour after the fact. Like after they leave the prisoner of war camp, he makes his way slowly back into the scene. You know, Clint Eastwood teams up with him, but they break it pretty quick. I don't know. There's a lot to comment on, especially like, and we'll get there, like morality and the way these characters are portrayed long term throughout the film.
I think it's not a huge issue that Van Cleef disappears for a while, because I think in a 3-hour movie, you can really run the risk of overexposing your villain. Especially when he's like a character that might be a little too one note if you see him too often. I think the fact that his presence is established in the first act, even when he's not on screen, it feels like he's lurking behind the scenes, you know? Like, you know he's going to come back eventually.
Also with his character, I guess I didn't understand what his angle was until deep into the film. I think when he's introduced, he just kind of like plays into the trope of I'm the bad guy and I'm here to kill people for money. I had no preconception of like, who is he? What is like, is he just a hired gun? Like, why is he hunting down Bill Carson? And obviously like that's given to us slowly, but I'm like, what does he do for a living? And then like you get midway through the film and it's like, oh yeah, he's like a part of the union and he's like a captain or a general or whatever the fuck. I don't know what his title is, but I'm like, he's a soldier for some reason.
Probably high ranking at least.
It felt like he was so transient. It was really hard to like kind of nail down his character until much later in the film, which was kind of bizarre. It's not something that I really expected. I don't know if you felt this way, but throughout the film, were you like, I was constantly questioning what was happening. There were like many times in the film where dialogue does not enter until deep into a scene, where a character is walking around, being somewhere, and your brain is constantly working to figure out what's the point of this.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I don't know if I ever questioned it really in that same way. I had trust in it.
My brain was working so hard, like, because you're given such little information over like a long stretch, and I couldn't quite nail down what exactly was happening.
Well, this is something I kind of wanted to bring up. The reason why I didn't worry about it is because I think about an hour in, I realized that the movie's not super story driven. It's more, here's these random scenarios along the way, and somehow it adds up to everybody meeting up at the same place at the same time later on. Like, it was just like really some like vignettes almost.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's the other thing. Okay, full circle. It being vignettes was the complete opposite of what I thought was going to happen. I thought there would be a female character that Blondie was going to like somewhat have a slight love interest with, but also like he's stoic and I don't got time for that type of bullshit. And Tuco would try to hold her hostage or something. Like, I thought it would be very, I don't know, structured and trope driven. And it was actually like the complete opposite. To your point, it is just vignettes of people being places at a particular time. I think at some points, those transitions between vignettes are like extremely comedic, almost parody. Like, I know it's like you're working with a specific era. Maybe you can get away with certain things, but them crossing over, trying to be like, we got to get on the other side of that river. And then all of a sudden it's like, we're 15 feet away from an entire battalion of Union soldiers. That was kind of comedic to me. I'm like, okay, how did they not know that they're walking up on 800 to 1,000 like Union soldiers on a hill?
Yeah, that's true. And that's one of those like side quests that I found a little pointless in the movie.
Okay.
Like, that army area scene, whatever you want to call it.
Is a battle on the bridge.
Yeah, that's one of the ones where I was, that's like almost 2.5 hours in, so I was getting a little tired.
Exactly.
I was like, let's get to the end.
The last 40 minutes, oh my God, like it's so long. Like then like they blow up the bridge and all this bullshit, and don't get me wrong, that's my highlight outside of the end, because I think a lot is shown throughout that scene in particular. I'm like, there is 40 minutes left, and I know we're at this goddamn gravesite. Like, like it just felt. I'm like, what can happen? Now, granted, 10 minutes were taken up by people staring at each other.
Yeah,
like, I get that.
It was fucking wonderful, though.
Yeah,
not gonna lie.
We'll get there. You know, like in the first hour of the film, I think to me is extremely forgetful. Like, I forget about it almost. I'm trying to think. It's like, okay, we get introduced to our characters briefly, and then it's Clint Eastwood out in the desert, and it's constantly running. I'm going to hold you hostage, and I'm going to hold you hostage, and do you know Bill Carson's name, or what's the name on the grave? And I don't know.
I thought all that shit was so awesome, though.
It is, but I think the film is so lengthy that it's kind of hard for my brain to like really pinpoint like where do we start and where do we end.
I wouldn't consider the first hour to be forgettable, because I think there's a lot of fun stuff in there, especially because we were talking about how this movie subverts a lot of tropes. The whole Clint Eastwood taking Tuco in like as like a fake bounty and then freeing him. I thought all those sequences were like so fun.
No, I think they're great.
I didn't expect it either. Like when they show the first scene where they're exchanging money after freeing him for the first time, I'm like, oh, they're in fucking cahoots. Like.
And I think that brings up our first point of morality being extremely wishy-washy between these characters.
Oh, yeah.
Again, subverted my expectation. I'm thinking the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like, we're going to play to these titles of our three characters, straight cut, no ifs, ands, or buts. Where, like, I was going into this thinking Clint Eastwood is going to be the man. And then I'm like, hey, he kind of has his moments of being a piece of shit.
For sure.
Fucking threw me for a loop.
I think a more realistic title for the movie would be The Ugly × 3. That's really all it is. I think they all have like a few moments that somewhat differ from each other. I mean, Eastwood, that sounds so weird just calling him that. Blondie, when they're at that big battle site with like the army, and he like puts the blanket over the soldier, that seems like that's a good guy. That's a good guy moment right there. But then there's so many contradictions for that character, or Van Cleef killing a teenager in that beginning lunch scene. Like, that's really bad. Yeah, they're all fucking morally ugly for the most part. That's super interesting.
Yeah, I think for the time, it's something unexpected. I guess for some reason, when you frame people historically, you always think they're more ignorant than you. I don't know if you have that view in your head.
I do.
I think like one of the big ones for you, I think that everyone experiences is Nazi Germany, World War II. Everyone's thinking, how could that have happened? Very easily, actually. I mean, it's not like those people were. I mean, you're talking about on the cusp, 10 years later, of nuclear fusion, the atom bomb, science. We literally took the Nazis into NASA. Like
We've brought that up a few times.
I know. I don't know why, but it's like, hey, like everyone is actually just as equally ignorant. Like morally, ethically, we are all extremely messy. But for some reason, when I think about old films, I'm like, oh, it's fucking, hey, we've got a couple of, my grandparents watched this movie. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I view them in a way like it's the old world. Like, this is the new world.
There are still some examples of things aging very badly, though.
I agree.
Like treatment of women, minorities, like that type of shit. Like, sometimes you watch an old movie and go like, Jesus Christ. Like, you know, but for the most part, yeah. Sometimes I go back and, damn, things were just as complicated then as they are right now.
Fun fact, I found out what a spaghetti western was while watching this movie. I didn't understand that term until watching it. I'm like, oh, it's because it's made by an Italian. I'm like, I get it. That's hilarious.
This is a revelation that I also came across over the last couple of weeks. Yeah, Italians making movies. I think this movie, at least with the knowledge that I have of what Italian movies are, it fills in the tropes. The ADR, we're going to cast everybody with different languages.
perform the scene in your native language, even though you got an English guy, an Italian, a Frenchman, a German. We'll do it all in post-production. Fuck it, why not? They recorded the movie without sound.
Really? This is something I did not know.
No sound was recorded live. Everything is sound effects,
ADR.
lines being read, ADR. Yeah. Did that distract you, by the way? Is that something that like bugged you along the way?
Really early on, it was something that I could not get over. And I think that was I think that was very apparent with the way the film is structured, extremely slow burn. I think it's really easy to catch things like that and be distracted by them because you're just on a still shot of a person talking, a majority of the time. And when they don't sync up, it is a little distracting. I didn't hate it by the end. I mean, by the end, I'm like, it is what it is.
You get pretty damn used to it.
Yeah. I mean, if you sit there long enough, of course. If you watch Into the Spider-Verse, when you first watch it, the first 10 minutes, you're like, oh, like this frame rate is like really different.
My head hurts.
But by the end of it, you're like, that was the coolest shit I've ever seen in my life. So, you know.
I think there's a few examples that are more egregious than others.
Yeah.
One specifically that comes to mind is the legless soldier that Van Cleef like gets info from. They didn't even fucking try in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
I thought there was one scene with Tuco where he's like by himself in the cave, and it kind of feels like this weird narration is going over the scene, and like the audio quality was different than everything else in the movie. That's like one of the scenes where I was like completely taken out of my immersion.
I mean, shot wise, that's a beautiful scene, but
yeah, it is.
Audio wise, it's like really frustrating.
Like once he starts talking, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like it didn't even sound like the actor.
I know.
That bugged me a whole lot.
Stuff like that is very strange, which like that would never fly today at all.
No.
Granted, I think after it's established, like, hey, it's ADR, it's not going to sync up perfectly. I think for me, I was more awestruck by the setting, open expanse, interesting situations.
Oh yeah.
Like for me, like one of my favorite sequences in the film where Tuco is handcuffed to a Union like captain or something, and they're on a train, and him knocking him off the train while pissing. I'm like, that is the coolest shit I've ever seen.
Dude, him hitting that dude's head against the rock is like fucking brutal.
I was not expecting that.
I was kind of shocked because when it shows them falling off the train, I felt really bad for the stunt actors because they fall into the sand that's like super rocky. And I don't mean like tiny rocks, like pebbles. These were like
boulders,
like kill a man if you threw it at him type rocks. I hope they got paid well. You know?
Oh, back then there were no standards.
Probably not.
There was no safety concerns for any actor on set. It was Alec Baldwin all over the place. Anyway, that was like really shocking because I feel like a lot of the film is parody in some way. Corny, campy action. And that's amazing. And I love that stuff. But that was the one moment I'm like, God damn, like this guy is going after it. And even though it was a fucking hilarious situation to like knock a man over while we're trying to both take a piss, it was really smart. It was great writing.
It was kind of a reality check to see such brutalism in this 60s movie. Another scene like that comes to mind is Tuco's interrogation, where I felt like if you go back and watch a 50s or 60s movie with someone getting beat like that, it'd be so cheesy.
It'd be rocky sound effects, like hit a man so hard it sounds like a bat breaking.
He gets his fucking ass kicked in that scene. Like it felt modern to a degree.
Also, the elements of we're gonna play music so that no one can hear this torture. Essentially, that was actually like really beautiful. Like,
oh man, that composition is chef's kiss. Mwah.
I think something that we probably should bring up is the Civil War plot was something that I was not expecting at all. And while like doing a little research for the film, I guess I never really viewed history this way. Westerns are typically set in this time, Civil War, early America. And in the Civil War is something that the vast majority of Western directors would avoid. It would be set during the Civil War era, but they would never touch the war. And this is a film written by 4 Italian men, directed by an Italian, touching the Civil War. And I found that extremely shocking because it'd be like an American writing about Japanese culture or like Chinese culture or, any like European culture. I found that very bold. I think that's a term that I'm probably going to throw around a lot here on out. Like,
Yeah.
there was a lot of bold choices going on in the film, like this being one of the big ones.
I think that all of like the American original Westerns strayed away from it because from what I know, American Westerns are usually showcasing like the good of America. Like,
You're John Wayne.
land of opportunity. Like, here's our cowboy that does no wrong type shit.
You talk like this. I'm a fucking cowboy. You put that woman down right now, mister. Like that type of shit.
It's weird though, because even though the Confederacy is featured in this movie, they're not portrayed in a negative light. Like both sides of the war are kind of like shown in a very neutral way.
I think what's a great
Contrast.
Yeah, contrast. That's the synonym that I'm looking for. The Union being the ones holding Confederates as prisoners of war. From my experience, and I think the vast majority of Americans probably, you view the Union as the good guys. Those are the guys against slavery. Those are the guys, like that's like the big number one topic.
The good old Yankees.
And showing the morality within these characters portraying the Union, it's like, oh yeah, like there is no line between these two separate armies, like with like ethical and moral obligation. Like it's portraying humanity in a way that's, we're both messy. It's just like one side won, and you view them that way, like the good guys.
The government has told me that this is what we're doing, but really in reality, just a bunch of young guys trying to survive,
That was my biggest thematic takeaway, where there is no complete good and complete evil, especially like being portrayed through our 3 characters and showing the Civil War, the 2 sides of the coin, where honestly, like it is completely turning it on its head, where you really are just following most of the time the Union. Like the Confederacy is really not a side that we're given. So it kind of paints them in a light that is a little bit more dark and confusing, I guess, for at least my perspective, like going into it. Like it really rocked my world a little bit.
And don't get me wrong, I hate everything that the Confederacy stood for, okay? Fuck them. But
wait, you mean you...
We live in Ohio, goddammit.
God damn it.
I have no heritage, not hate.
It's my heritage, god damn it.
I don't have that in my blood.
I don't
but
either.
In terms of displaying a theme within a film, it was brilliant that they did it that way.
And I think it's beautiful in a way where it's like an extremely bold take for an Italian to display like American culture that way. I thought that was like, if there was anything I could take away from the film, like I think that's the major theme that I think resonated with me the most. That like fucking blew me away. Everything else cut out. Like I think that would be the one thing throughout the film that will stick with me the most. I found it super interesting.
It's not something that you see tackled in a complex, blurred lines kind of way, like in modern film for the most part.
At all. No, I don't think.
I can't name one film. God damn it.
Granted, I do think I am a little bit like I have a blind side because I have not had the opportunity to watch late 90s, early 2000s, like historical dramas. So that is like a blind side in my repertoire. So that is something that I will comment. From my knowledge, I have never seen anything contrast like American history in such a way. So I found that extremely interesting.
Piss break. I kind of wanted to get into how much Tarantino is inspired by Sergio Leone. I think a year or two ago, I had a conversation with my Uncle Steve about Tarantino's movies, and he told me Quentin Tarantino stole everything that Sergio Leone ever did.
Whoa, that's a big comment.
He said all his movies end in a Mexican standoff, which they do, for the most part they do, to be honest.
Yeah.
There's a few instances in this that I thought were pretty clear. And you can use the word stolen or inspiration as loosely as you want, I guess. You can kind of depends.
Dude, hold on a second.
Ooh, what?
I don't want to steal your thunder, but like you are right. Like that comment is correct. All of his films do end in a fucking Mexican standoff. I've literally never thought of it like that.
Reservoir Dogs does.
Pulp Fiction does. Django does for the most part. I mean, that's like the last 10 minutes, but
I don't think Inglourious Bastards does.
Yeah, it's still you have like two characters. Yes, he fucking puts a scar on his head. Like it's
usually like
it's metaphorical.
Everybody pointing guns at each other at the same time.
Your uncle's right, but go ahead. Sorry. That's a huge revelation for me.
A big thing that I noticed was, and this is a scene that we kind of skipped over earlier, was the lunch scene with Angel Eyes and that guy that he interrogates, where they're talking to each other. Mm-hmm. I couldn't help but think of the first scene in Inglourious Bastards with Christoph Waltz, where he goes to the French guy's house and he's like, they're like sharing tea or coffee in a very intimidating manner.
Oh my God, you're right.
Dude, it's stolen or inspired verbatim. I'm not mad because I like Tarantino a lot, but I couldn't help but notice, dude.
Only having seen Inglourious Bastards in the last few years, that scene is the most tense that I think he has ever shot. Mm-hmm. Like that scene fucking is petrifying.
And I think that one might be a little bit more effective than what appears in this film, but it does seem like it was kind of the blueprint in a way.
Damn, dude. Your uncle's smart as fuck.
He's a little bit of an old movie nerd kind of guy, I guess.
That's fucking amazing.
Another one I wanted to bring up, another tie-in, is the career of Clint Eastwood is echoed quite loudly in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Rick Dalton is very inspired by Clint Eastwood's career. Started out generic Western TV show, not going anywhere. God damn it, I gotta go and do Italian Westerns. That's the whole fucking plot of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh my God. You know that title is stripped from
Once Upon a Time in the West.
Yep.
Yeah.
God, dude, he's a fucking scam artist, bro. Like, what the fuck?
I don't think it's a secret that Tarantino like wears his influences on his sleeve.
Of course, yeah.
And his pant leg and his collar and his hat.
Okay.
But I'm not mad. He makes great movies, you know?
It's fucking Quentin Tarantino, yes. Everybody fucking loves him. Like, except for like that one bitch that would interview him that one time on TV at that news. I don't know. You remember that? You ever?
Why so much violence?
Yeah.
Because it's so much fun. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
I really love, and this is a great side note, but I really love Samuel Jackson's comments on Tarantino, where I think he was doing an interview for 60 Minutes. One of the journalists, I can't, his name escapes me, but pretty iconic guy. And he was talking about how Samuel Jackson says that he cannot be racist because, in my opinion, all my roles, my character feels like the smartest character.
You know what? That might be true.
He says he cannot be racist because of, how do I put this? Like, I don't want to...
He puts more thought into the writing of that type of character.
Like Samuel Jackson's portrayal of the house slave. Like, the house slave is extremely intelligent. Like, he's the one that figures out, like,
he fucks up their plan.
Mr. Candy, he's here for that girl. Like, and his character in Pulp Fiction is extremely intelligent.
He walks out unscathed in that one. And Jackie Brown, which I know you haven't seen, is the exact same way. He figures everything out that Pam Grier is doing in that movie.
I fucking love Tarantino. Like,
yeah,
for that reason, like, I think he is working in so many layers. Like, first and foremost, like, he has, without a doubt, like, Adderall, cocaine energy to where, like, he is just all cylinders are firing. I think it's extremely admirable and quite interesting to watch. So anyway, super weird side note, but I think that's like seeing his influences within this film. That just brought like brand new ammo to my fucking arsenal, dude. Like that's fucking great.
The freeze frames that introduce each of our three characters with the font that appears next to them, I feel like has been used in some manner in
Kill
his
Bill.
movies. Yeah.
God, dude, he really does just love film.
Yeah.
God, this is opening up a big can of worms for me. What else do you want to tackle while we're here?
I guess this is kind of a small scene, but do you remember at the beginning of the movie where we have the two guys walk into each other? like in the center of town, and you think they're about to have a duel, but then they walk into the saloon and shoot that up instead. That guy, he's literally the first character that has his face appear on camera. Like it starts with a close up, like right in his fucking face, and he comes back to get revenge on Tuco later on. Remember, he has like the one arm.
Yeah, in the bathroom or the bathtub.
Yeah, I really like how it subverts introducing like this late antagonist into the game. Like, oh god, like how's this guy gonna play out? And then he just gets shot and like killed immediately.
The line is I'm butchering it and I don't know it word for word, but essentially, don't talk, just shoot.
Yeah, I think that's verbatim actually.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha. Little things like that are a lot of fun.
Also, I think it is a little bit of parody or like smart humor in a way of like delivering big monologue just to have it fucking stepped on. Like that was really smart to me, and I think those are the moments where I really liked Tuco a lot. I think at the end of it, I really felt for his character. Like he was extremely flawed in the ways that the other two weren't really displayed. Angel Eyes being this almost like this honed edge. I'm going to disregard life for money. I mean, you get like his morality is displayed within the first 15 minutes of him coming back and saying like, he tried to offer me $1,000 to kill you. You know, I'm a man of my word, essentially pulling the, this is my morality and I adhere to it to a T.
Yeah.
Killing his, his contract.
I never go without getting the job done, basically.
Like that was, you get to know his character and the way he operates very quickly. Blondie, I think his was more muddled, but I think essentially Clint Eastwood's character is very, how do I put this? He flows with the situation. I really feel like his motives are really not on display. Rather, he is like this transient vessel that the story moves through in a way that I don't really feel like he's the main character.
He's really not.
And then with Tuco, I think he's the main character. I feel like he is the one that has the most complex story. You know, he becomes you get to hear the list of crimes that he's committed while being hung. And like you're like, oh, this guy is a fucking piece of shit.
Yeah.
But also, I feel like you're extremely empathetic with him. You understand, especially in moments with like his brother at the church. It's either you become a priest or you become a bandit. And I picked the harder road. And like that's where he operates. And I think he's so much more lovable because of like his messiness.
Yeah. He steals the fucking show, this entire movie. I don't know if the crimes that are listed are all that real. I think there's a sense of reality to them, but I think because of the scam they're running, they can manipulate the situation to like make him worse, give him a higher bounty. Because we get two scenes where he almost gets hung and then Eastwood saves him, and like the list of crimes are different each time. It's completely ridiculous. Like, it's everything under the sun.
I think this gets kind of echoed and mirrored in Django with, now you may get the court-martial. The fact that when you would turn in a bounty, it was almost like you're taking someone's word for it. The fucking court-martial, the sheriff, may not know exactly all of the crimes listed for this bounty, or like it's not like they have like an FBI's most wanted list. It's like you turn in a paper to this guy and he's like, sounds good.
Yeah.
So
there wasn't a whole lot of checks and balances back in the day.
And I think that's like kind of comedic the way that's being portrayed.
For sure. I think with a character like Tuco, they could have accidentally steered too far into comedic relief territory or he's a doofus kind of thing. I think he kind of displays himself as being just as smart as the other two.
100%.
He has an uncanny ability of self-preservation. I think that the way him and Clint Eastwood's character differ is that Blondie reads the situation and like kind of reacts later. Tuco reacts in the moment, but he usually like reacts in a way that kind of gets him out of it anyways. I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting.
I always felt like there were subtle things going on where the tension in the scene would change ever so slightly just based off of slight mannerisms. Should I reach for my gun? There would be moments of display where I would take my hand off my gun to be submissive in a way. Or there would be moments where, again, like you said, Tuco was being actually the smart one in that situation. Where I think like the bathhouse, or not the bathhouse, but him in the bathtub of this abandoned building taking a bath was, you get to see a lot of his character throughout that, where he's always on defense. He's like the stray dog.
Yeah, he's scrappy.
Yeah. Him having the gun in the water underneath the bubbles, like that was really smart.
Yeah, he knows how to look out for himself.
With Blondie, he is my plan is formulated long after the fact, and the reveal will be deep into the situation. And with Angel Eyes Are Bad, it's like ham-fisted, I'm in control, this power grab kind of aggressive nature to him. Where I think like throughout the film, again, these ebbs and flows feel extremely natural as far as the writing is displayed. It's really smart, and I guess I want to commend the film for that. I mean, it being this old, again, calling back to, people in that time were just more ignorant and aren't as smart, where like I was completely blown away in the fact that this was some extremely tight script writing.
I completely agree. Although, do you feel like there might have been a few instances of coincidence that played into things?
I feel like that happens a lot more early in the film. Remember the march through the town and the Tuco and his gang?
They're trying to hang Blondie. Blondie getting saved by artillery that doesn't kill them, but just so happens to save everybody in the situation is like kind of ridiculous. But I wasn't mad about it either.
You know what? I think those moments early on in the film really dwindle away by the end. I think those like coincidence moments that are littered throughout the beginning of the film are just playing to, I think they're just like trying to set up.
What, like the next plot point?
No, how do I put this? I think those coincidence moments are just being the tropes to show this is the good, this is the bad, this is the ugly. This is the good. He always will get away. Don't you worry. Or like, since he's the ugly, he can never really capitalize on the position that he's gained.
Oh, that's a good point.
You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
And then like later throughout the film, those become less apparent because we're deepening our characters. We're showing that they're not just like these cookie cutter moments early on in the film. Like, we're going to subvert your expectation by the end. Like, we're going to kind of like fuck with these characters' personalities.
That is a good point.
But I completely agree with you. That is such an apparent thing early on.
But what about when Blondie and Tuco are out in the desert and they just so happen to come across
Bill Carson.
Bill Carson and everybody else dead in like this chariot?
Yeah, that's strange.
It's more of like a Destiny type plot point, I guess.
It's the happenstance. It's the coincidence.
Like it's meant to happen.
Mm-hmm. I think it kind of like speaks to the point you brought up earlier with this is less of a character-driven, plot-driven story and just characters kind of becoming what's happening around them. But I do think by the end it becomes this display of all of these coincidences playing into this very major and pivotal deep plot where like the characters themselves are taking advantage of happenstance.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's fucking cool.
Don't get me wrong, I was not mad about it.
Is it an issue type of question?
Like script writing tricks, I guess.
Like MacGuffins all over the place?
Yeah, exactly. We could like probably talk about the
finale?
The final scene of the graveyard, which was wonderful.
Okay.
Amazing.
By far one of my favorite endings of a film ever.
Really?
Just like the final reveal of the fact that Blondie did have the upper hand. There was no treasure. Was it Ashton? What was the last name?
Arch Stanton.
Stanton, sorry. Just feeling like there was all of these like really complex things coming to its final head. feeling like the characters that really deserved a decent ending got it. Like, I was really worried. I didn't know how this film ended. And you have this 3-way Mexican standoff happening, and I don't know why I had no trust by the end. I'm like, I don't know how this is going to end. I'm like, is the bad guy going to make away? Is Blondie going to die? It's like this very up in the air situation, and it fucking got me. Like, the editing for this final scene, it was superb, man.
I know that I said that this was like a vignette-driven story, but once we get to this final scene, it really does feel like we have many working pieces that built up to it. It is wonderful. I think that when Tuco is the first one to arrive to the cemetery and he's looking for the gravestone, and there's so many fucking gravestones that he's like circling around and looking for it, and then the cinematography, like the camera, just starts spinning. It's nauseating, to be honest. But I think it displays the situation in a very effective way. I can't tell if it's making a comment on the war itself. Like, hey, look at all these fucking dead bodies that are like just buried here.
It immediately reminded me of Arlington Cemetery in Washington, D.C. Where all of the white crosses. If you've ever been there, I remember that very vividly. That's immediately what I got reminded of just bodies upon bodies just buried for miles, what it seems.
Gravestones marked as unknown. It's really sad.
Well, it reminded me of that as well, because at Arlington Cemetery they do the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. It's like a I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like, forgive me, anybody that like listens to this that's in the military, they would know, but it's almost like a parade, like this showmanship, like they do, like
memorial.
Yeah, a memorial, like like when, if you've ever been to like a family member or someone that's been in the armed services, and you have like the honor guard like shoot off rounds like blanks into the air and stuff, similar to that, where like they march and they do like essentially like, what is a kata? I don't know how to describe it. Like
unfortunately,
like,
I can't fill you in.
Like routine, where like there's so many steps to take.
Tradition.
Yeah, and there is a formula, a tradition, a way to honor an unknown soldier. And like that's what it reminded me of, like seeing the unknown on these wooden crosses of gravestones, and again calling into comments on the war. That's where my mind was at during that. Yeah, I literally I was getting like really sick like watching it, because it's not only like brief. It's like, hey, let's do a minute and a half of like this camera just spinning all over the place.
Dude, I was 2.5 beers in when I watched this scene. It was fucking with me. But yeah, it does lead to a series of scenes that are really great. Tuco finding the grave, starting to dig it up with like Eastwood's silhouette, his shadow like shining over, and then you get the like music. It's really funny that Blondie empties out the bullets of Tuco's gun the night before, because he knows that he's the wild card. Although I do find it interesting that when they do the Mexican standoff, they both shoot Van Cleef, or they both aim at him at least.
That calls back to the journey that these characters have been on, where they both know that there's a slight bit of trust between them both.
Yeah.
Where like Van Cleef's character as Angel Eyes the Bad almost like shoehorns his way into relationally with Blondie, like leaving the prisoner of war camp, like, no, Tuco's not dead, but you and I are gonna walk this road together now.
I know you're smart enough not to talk, because it won't
save you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like that is really smart, and also like extremely subtle. Like it can go slightly overlooked if you're not paying attention, which I think speaks volumes to how the story is set up and the way it's finished. Granted, I think it is shown slightly, like our three main characters are like dead-eye, perfect shot gunslingers.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact that Blondie shoots to injure Angel Eyes, and only when he attempts to kill Blondie after being injured does he actually kill him. And then shooting his hat and shooting his gun into the grave, like, that was fucking icing on the cake, dude.
Oh, yeah.
Although, like, the sound effects don't make sense at all. Like, you get a gunshot in the
ricochet sound. Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense, but...
Hey, man, it's the trope.
Hey, man.
It's got to be there.
It's beautiful.
I think you made a comment earlier about how long this face-off is, and it's something that I meant to bring up earlier, but do you remember how I said this was filmed with no sound?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the score was written and performed before the movie was filmed, so they played the score on set during the filming of the scenes, and the score dictated how the scenes were paced. So that's why a lot of scenes are drawn out way longer than you would expect them to be. They're playing to the music.
That's what the actors are going off of?
Yes.
God, it's fucking sick.
There's a scene earlier where they're at the bridge and Tuco is about to give Blondie the info about what cemetery they're at. How long does he pause before speaking? 30, 40 seconds? It's a fucking close-up of his face where he's like, all right, I'll tell you. And like we're just sitting on it. He's waiting for the cue, the music cue. It's so weird. It sounds like it would suck. Like normally this would be disastrous for mini movies, but the score is so perfect because it dictated the pacing of the film. It ended up being so amazing. I don't know if I can even put it into words.
There was like some I meant to comment on earlier, and I want to wrap up soon, but there's a specific sound, or excuse me, there's a specific theme in the score where it kind of is taking like this neutral fill sound where it's like kind of like beautiful melancholy that gets littered throughout scenes. And I think it's actually what introduces a lot of scenes. Little things like that where this callback, it's like a little simmer moment where you can kind of just sit down into a scene. Because a lot of it is just like subtle transition, character going here and there. That shit is fucking beautiful to me. And I don't think you really can get anything like that outside of this genre and time period that I think was like a treat to watch. It cannot happen in the way that it's portrayed in the film, like in modern standard.
It makes me very sad, to be honest. Long sequences of Tuco checking the cigars at bonfires.
Yeah, like that stuff is so fucking... It was smart because at first you're like, hey, why the fuck is this guy like trying to bum cigars off of a campfire? And then as the sequence rolls through, you're like, oh, he's tracking how close he is. Which, again, I don't know, like this is a really weird side tangent, but like I've been reading The Dark Tower. I read the second book at the beginning, or excuse me, at the end of December and finished that up at the end of the year. Like Stephen King was inspired. The gunslinger, Roland, the character that is the main character of The Dark Tower, is completely based off of Clint Eastwood's character in this trilogy, draws direct inspiration from, and he's chasing the man in black across the desert, and he checks his campfires and little things like that where like really enriching for me consuming the film in a way where I know that this iconic film is being drawn upon by an iconic author, Stephen King. It just felt like it's multifaceted, multi-layered film where you're like getting a lot out of what otherwise would be just an old fucking movie. Yeah. So little things like that were just, I'm glad you brought that up. I almost completely forgot to bring up that point.
A lot of those small scenes get lost in transition, man. Do you know what my favorite scene in the movie is? I know we're about to head into ratings.
That's all good.
Tuco going to the gun store. And
oh my God, I almost completely forgot about that.
That is my favorite scene in the movie. We're just taking time. He's taking apart these revolvers and like mixing different parts of the gun around. You know, when they filmed this, Sergio Leone, he just told Eli Wallach, because like neither of them knew anything about guns, he said like just play with the guns. And so he sat there and like took them apart and like, you know how he rolls the bullet chamber around,
he listens to it up close to his ear.
None of it to him meant anything, but in the scene it makes him look like an expert fucking gunslinger. It's so cool. I don't know, like those small parts get lost in transition to like the bigger story beats, but they're all so expertly crafted, whether it is accidental or not. It's so awesome, dude.
Yeah, it's unique as fuck. Like that's like trivia. Like that's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
It's like history. Old films are extremely fun for this reason. I think this one kind of like is at the top of the tower here. Like it just feels like the penthouse suite of like old films. It's sick as fuck.
Oh yeah.
I think like I do want to comment like when we wrap up here, the end, I was like really worried for Tuco. I didn't want Tuco to die. That was my biggest thing, like him hanging.
Yeah,
Like
I kind of turned against Blondie when that happened.
Yeah, I know. I was like, oh my, there's no way. They're like, that was my immediate thought. I'm like, they can't, like, they cannot like sour Blondie at the end here. But him shooting the rope is like the perfect symbolism from like where they started to where they end.
It feels like they're destined to do this forever, basically.
You say that, and like that immediately reminds me of The Dark Tower, where like those characters are literally destined to do what they are doing forever. Sorry, but
They'll be friends, they'll be enemies, rinse, wash, repeat.
yeah, God damn it. This film just feels extremely multi-layered in a way that is unlike anything I've ever watched. Like it's very subtle. Like I had a big fucking grin across my face when I finished the film. And I laughed and chuckled. And, you know, the whole reason I recommended this film is because we wanted to both watch this film. We had mentioned to each other, like, yeah, man, that's something I want to tackle sometime soon. Like, we at least need to watch it. And, like, my grandpa used to watch this film when I was a kid. And him and I hanging out. You know, my grandparents would watch us after school. And just knowing that my grandpa, like, in his retirement has, like, sat down, watch this film for like 6 hours on TV because like that's the way old people can like consume fucking TV. Yeah. They have to watch a movie when it's on TV for 5 to 6 hours. If it's a 3-hour movie, it goes on forever. I felt like really connected to him while watching it. That was something that I really really enjoyed. Like this was a movie that I knew nothing about as a kid, but we would always say like the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like when my grandpa was watching The Good and the Bad and the Ugly, we would just say the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like, we would say it all day long that day. And I don't know, it's just cool for me to, as an adult, like really digest this film in a way that I've never had a chance to see it. That was a lot of fun for me, and I felt oddly close to him for some reason while watching it, which was a treat.
My grandpa used to watch Westerns all the time as well, and I would walk in and watch for 10 minutes or so. You know, I'm a kid.
You don't have no idea what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe this was one of the movies that was on at that time. Yeah, it did give me that sense, exactly as you just stated. Childlike wonder. Even like watching it now, as a 29-year-old, I'm like, yeah, like I'm watching a bygone era. It's amazing.
Good thing is, like, I think after watching this film, like, I really want to, like, open myself up to more Western films. Like, I think both of us probably share the same sentiment of, like, we got a lot out of what otherwise would be, like, just a lost genre to both of us.
I would consider it criminal if I never checked up on Sergio Leone's other films, and I will do that eventually.
I, like, check through top 10 spaghetti Western ranked blog posts and shit. Like, I'm like, I want to watch, like, these movies now. Like, I feel like these are like the Sunday afternoon, just like if like a sports season isn't going on, like this is what I need to be doing with my time. I don't know. It was just a fucking treat, dude.
When it comes to ratings,
yeah,
how do you feel about it, man? 1 to 10.
You know, I think we said just about the most praise that you could give a film of this age. I think going into it, I was pretty solid with my rating, even though I think this conversation elevated my viewing experience. I think I still want to sit like at a 9.5, 9 out of 10. I think that's where I sit. I still have my problems. The ADR is like really frustrating at times, like so frustrating. But I think thematically, like just the composition of the characters and the way they relate to each other and the way they operate in these 3 hours felt really special. That was the most important thing that I think I got out of it. It was extremely unique. And I think it's something that only this genre could really tackle. I think 9.5 is like where I sit. It definitely could be a 10 out of 10 in many people's eyes. But I just think watching it once all the way through was good enough to kind of cement it in that way. I don't know. It just felt beyond solid. Probably a masterpiece. I don't know why I wouldn't give it that, but it just feels... It's so close for some reason, but not quite there.
Okay, that's completely fair. For me, I think this movie is as flawed as any other really fucking great movie, but for some reason, the trend setting, the influence that it established, I relate to you in the way that I had a big fucking grin on my face the whole time I watched it. This is going to be one of the biggest, fattest 10 out of 10s that I've ever given, I think. I loved it so much.
I think you're right. Like honestly, I do. Like I do think you're right.
It's janky in many ways, but it subverted my expectations in ways that I didn't expect.
God, you're right.
It hit just all the notes that I hoped it would hit, and then it hit ones outside of those notes that I didn't expect.
God, you're so fucking right.
It was just so exciting and fun. I loved it, man.
Look at me trying to be fucking cool, being like, nah, it's not a fucking 10, bro. Like you're like, yeah, bro, it's fucking 10. Like, come on. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. You're so fucking right. Like, I mean, you're fucking right. I don't know how else to.
I think
say
9 to 9.5 is very fair, though.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was fucking awesome. The floor is yours, my friend. I mean,
oh, I almost forgot.
Yeah.
I guess this is dictated by your response to this question. Would you rather do an album or a movie?
God damn it! I wish you didn't do this to me. Dude, we have not done an album in so long.
That's true.
But part of me wants to like take the album road because I've been super dry on a lot of music, but I know you have been in movie mode and I want to like let that happen. Like I want to let you just like you are like movie mode. So I just want you to pick the movie that you like want to show me.
Well, this is hard to explain. The album that I had chosen is something I had planned for a while, but as the weeks have gone on, the concept kind of became dry to me for some reason. Like it didn't feel right anymore. And there are a bunch of movies that I have watched recently that I wanted to recommend, but I think I'm going to put them on the back burner for a while. The movie that I want to recommend is actually something I've never seen before.
Good. These are always the best.
And I have another question for you to lead into my white boy spiel.
Okay.
Austin, I consider me and you to have fine taste in music and movies.
Yeah.
I think we appreciate things.
We are a couple of homos when it comes to that shit, yeah.
And I think we both have... How did I not comment on that?
Yeah, anyway, continue.
I just let it breeze right through me.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Go ahead.
We're a couple homos.
Yeah, for sure.
We both have guilty pleasures, I think.
100%, yeah. I've been leaning into them lately, yeah.
What is Alex Getter's biggest guilty pleasure?
Like WWE?
Correct.
Okay, cool.
I like wrestling a lot.
Yeah.
I'll be the first to admit it.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2008, Darren Aronofsky made a film called The Wrestler.
Is this with Mickey Rourke?
It is.
Oh, dude, I've been wanting to like see this for a long time.
So have I. And I've actually been waiting to do it for the podcast, and I kept putting it off for the last couple of years. And the fact that me and you might watch the Royal Rumble tonight.
There is no mind about it.
Okay, we will watch the Royal Rumble tonight. This is my Hail Mary. Like, this is an in the situation, circumstantial pick that I chose today.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Dude, I have like had an itch that I've wanted scratched for a while. There is a movie that I think will come up on the podcast eventually. Mm-hmm. It's called Warrior.
Tom Hardy, isn't
Tom
it?
Hardy and Joel Edgerton.
Yeah.
And I've been wanting to like rewatch like the Rocky movies for some reason. Like I want to watch a movie about like fighters for some reason. This will probably scratch that itch a little bit.
I think it's supposed to display the shittiness of either being an indie or a washed up former star.
Yeah.
Like in a tough business.
I've heard only good things about this movie. So,
Okay, good.
And it's something that I don't know a lot about, but it's like I know of it and I'm curious to see.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen 2 other Darren Aronofsky films like Requiem for a Dream, Black Swan. So I kind of know what tone to expect going in.
I've never seen Requiem for a Dream, but I've seen Black Swan. So I've only heard like fucking harrowing things about Requiem for a Dream. So
they're both fucked up movies.
Yeah, for sure. I was a lot younger when I watched Black Swan though, so I don't think it really registered. But yeah, man, that's gonna be a lot of fun.
I hope it's good.
Mickey Rourke, dude. Mickey Rourke. That'll be a can of worms to open up. So, wow. That was like one of my favorite podcasts we've ever done. So, we're about to do another one.
We might be a little drunk.
There's only one way to talk about fucking life and full circles and Christopher Nolan, and you must do it in an inebriated state. So
Yeah.
That'll be the next episode. Catch us. Our blood alcohol content will be above the legal limit. Getter, that was one of the best. That was so much fun. The wrestlers coming up. I have nothing other to say other than could you do me a favor and sign us out?
Adios.